So I just played my first tournament over the weekend. I did mine in the bag not too long before that. And if you haven't noticed, I made some changes to the bag. In particular, I'm using way fewer discs than I was in years past. And I think it has leveled up my game, simplified it in a way that has made me a significantly better player. I think the vast majority of people can probably benefit from this sort of mindset of having a small number of discs in your bag, or really just the number that you exactly need. You don't want any more than that, and you probably don't want less because you don't want to go too little where you don't have certain shots. You might have guys on tour like Paul Ulibarri who just carries a ton of discs, and maybe that works for him, but I found that this is a lot better for me. I think I had close to 30 discs at one point in my bag, and now, not counting my putting putters, I think I only have 18, maybe 19 if I added one. And I feel like my game is way more consistent. And hopefully I'm playing these holes here, play a couple of easy holes on a little 9-hole layout, can kind of illustrate why I think that is. Anyway, let's just throw a little shot real quick. Man, I'm really ready for it to warm up. That tournament I just played, it was like 5-hour drive downstate. It was like 75 sometime during round 2. It kind of started to get a little windy and maybe a little bit of rain, but it's like barely even 40 and windy now. Get under. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So, for example, I might have a bunch of different discs I would throw on this hole. Because I've pared down my bag so much, the only disc that I really feel like is the right disc for this hole is my Pyro, which I've been throwing way more lately because I need to, because I don't have another disc that can fill its slot. And therefore, I've become way more comfortable with it. I've gotten way better at throwing the shots that call for the Pyro. And I'm also, it's just like, I know how to throw so many different shots with just this specific disc. I don't have, you know, it coming out maybe once or twice around. I'm throwing it like 5, 6, 7, 8 times around, depending on the course. And so I'm just getting way better with this disc. I'm getting way better results. I parked this hole and I, you know, didn't throw the Pyro all that much last year. But that's sort of the big idea, right? The big idea is you want to lower the number of discs in your bag so you learn every single disc in your bag very, very well. Now you're gonna have some like utility discs. I have a deflector that I barely throw. I have a jawbreaker zone that's really only for very specific shots on forehands, and I have a roadrunner for rollers. But other than that, pretty much every disc in my bag should be getting thrown somewhat regularly. Maybe the more understable ones won't get thrown on a day that it's very windy, and maybe my drivers won't get thrown on like a shorter course where I'm throwing mids and putters. But generally speaking, I'm gonna be throwing all of them pretty equally, and so there's not going to be one disc in my bag that doesn't get as much love. I'm going to be throwing all of them enough that I feel like I'm very comfortable with every single one. If you feel like having a lower number of discs create holes in your bag, spend some time throwing with a lower number of discs, and you'll see that the gap that the disc fills gets wider because you're better at throwing it, and those holes go away as your knowledge of the disc increases. Now just don't fade all the way into the OB. I threw that way too high. Oh, bye-bye. That skipped on the other side. You know, I gotta work on my forehands. We'll throw a forehand just for funsies. Yeah, that's probably the optimal throw there. I can throw backhands in the cold fairly well. Forehands on my body just feels so tense. I just cannot do it. Oh my God, that was actually really close. Another thing that paring down your bag will do is force you to learn shots with discs that you maybe wouldn't normally throw. For example, I've been throwing a lot more standstill forehands with higher speed discs. Like if I have an upshot that's maybe on a little bit of a slope, or I'm just not feeling like my zone or my Pyro is gonna be that useful, I might just disc up to my Firebird and just do a standstill forehand because that's just what feels comfortable to me, and I can get a lot easier of a flight with a higher speed disc instead of having to do a little bit of a run up and throw a slower speed disc. And that might not be something I would do if, let's say, I had a very specific zone in my bag that I felt was good, or a very specific run of Pyro. I don't. I just have to find what works, and that's actually ended up being really useful to me. Also, like I said, the discs are fewer, and so I know exactly what they're gonna do. And so even though I'm maybe throwing something that's like in theory suboptimal, right? Maybe a very specific stability of Pyro with a little bit of run up would give me the best opportunity. I'm not as practiced with that disc. I'm very well practiced with my Firebird, and so I can find a way to make that disc work, and that's why I think it works out the best. So in theory, it's not the best because you don't have the perfect disc for that shot, but when you learn your discs really well, every disc kind of ends up being what you make of it. Oh, I pulled it over too much still. Another thing I've started to notice is having fewer discs removes doubt from your brain when you're throwing shots. When you have so many options for a shot, you can kind of have that doubt in the back of your mind, like, oh, maybe I should have thrown this disc. Or if you mess it up, you're like, oh, it was the wrong disc choice, right? But then when you only have one disc you can throw in that shot, you know that it was you that messed it up. You're like, okay, that was exactly the disc I had to throw, and I made the right choice, I just threw it wrong. And you learn how to throw that disc the right way on that hole or in that situation, and you don't have doubts in your mind of whether it was the disc or not. Because then I think what you end up doing is you end up switching up the disc you're gonna throw round to round, make the same mistake because it probably wasn't the disc anyways, which you'll find out, and then you're just gonna keep making mistakes without finding the core of the problem was that you're not throwing it right. It basically forces you to actually find solutions instead of using your discs as a scapegoat. Because I think as much as we try not to do that, subconsciously, we're gonna end up doing that. And you'll hear people say that all the time, like, oh, I should have thrown my more stable disc or my flippier one or whatever. When you only have like 1 or 2 discs in the slot that you wanna throw, there's not that much that you have to choose from. And so it's kind of up to you to throw the shot well, not the disc to be the right choice to make. Drop, oh. And also, like, you don't want to give yourself a ton of choices during a round. You want to have the fewest things to choose from, that you're more likely to make the right choice. If you have so many choices, you're going to make wrong choices. Even if it is the case that you're actually making the wrong choice and that's why you're playing the hole bad, you don't want to make that a possibility. You want to remove the possibility of making bad choices and make it so that it's very high chance that you make the right choice. And then because you know your disc so well, even if you kind of maybe choose the wrong disc, you know it so well that you can make it work anyways. Oh, I got cold hands. Well, the T sign is moved and the stakes are gone. So I think I'm just gonna tee off from this stick right here. I'm just gonna assume someone put it there because that's where the tee box is. Seems like kind of the right spot, maybe. I don't really know. There's like not even an area where it looks like people are teeing off from. So we're gonna tee off from here, doesn't really matter. To kind of piggyback off of that point of not having a lot of discs to choose from, when you're getting hot on a course and you're playing well, there's nothing better feeling than just throwing the same disc on multiple holes and just really feeling good with that disc. Because when you're really feeling a disc, you don't want to grab anything else out of your bag. And you don't want to feel like you should. You want to feel like this is the only disc I have to throw on these holes, and I'm just going to feel it out. And if it feels good, I'm just going to start birdieing everything. If you have so many options, you're not really feeling one disc. You don't have like a good feel for the flight of that disc. There's going to be little variances in every little shot that you're throwing because you're choosing different discs from the bag every time. And it could feel good to like want to pick the perfect disc for a hole, but I think it's way better to just get in a really good groove with one disc and dissect the hole in a way that makes sense for you in that disc. For example, if I'm playing a course in the woods where there's a lot of right to left finishing shots in like the 350-ish range, I might just grab my FD1 and just throw it on half the holes. And I might end up birdieing a ton of them because I just know exactly how that disc is flying for me that day. Based on the wind, the temperature, the humidity, how far I'm throwing the disc, how hard I'm throwing it, my grip, all that stuff. I don't have to like recalibrate that for each disc that I'm throwing. I know exactly how that disc is going for me as soon as I start throwing it. And I can carry that knowledge with me into each hole. And that's, I think, really, really powerful. And people don't really think about that. They just want to think, oh, what's the right disc for this hole? But what disc am I feeling really good with right now? Well, it's this one, because this is the only one I can be throwing. You can kind of create that flow for yourself, that sort of flow state of being able to throw the perfect disc every time by limiting your options. I have no idea how far this is. A little bit of a headwind. I'm just going to put it on hyzer. Skip. Oh, I think I'm well short. What the heck? Okay, I'm gonna guess the tee pad that I played last time is like 50 feet further, because that was really short. Let's try an Emperor, because I think this is closer to like 400. Yeah, that's gotta be like 400, because that's pin high. I swear to God, this better be the last video I gotta make this year with gloves on and 3 layers. I'm sick of being cold. Oh, flex 3s aren't great in this weather, but as soon as it warms up, they'll be perfect. When I first started playing disc golf, a lot of the in the bags I watched were primarily from like older school guys who like to keep a lot of discs in the bag, specifically sort of older runs of stuff as well. And so as like a byproduct, whether consciously or subconsciously, I kind of just followed that mindset and did sort of the same thing. I looked for older runs of discs that were particularly good. I had a good amount of disc in my bag to fill a lot of different slots, and that was kind of what pushed me into the player I was for quite a while. Now, as I've gotten better, as I've sort of started to form my own identity, I've kind of followed the line of simplicity a lot more. And it took me a little bit to do that for my bag. But like with my form, I try and make my form as simple as I can. I try and make sort of the mantras and the swing thoughts that I have very simple. The way I play holes, I've been trying to get more and more simple. And so why shouldn't I do the same thing with my bag? And the reason I actually started to think about this was I looked at Gannon Buhr's in the bag. He just had that amazing season. I watched us in the bag, and he's like, yeah, I only have like maybe 20 discs in the bag, probably fewer than that. He thinks everyone who has a ton of discs in their bag has too many. You don't need any more than 20. And I tend to agree with him now, because you really don't need that many. Like right here on this hole, I used to bag a Toro and a zone. And I would look at this hole and I would say, should I go Toro or zone here? Like they both could get the mission accomplished. I could park the hole with both of them, but that internal conversation that I'm having of which disc should I throw and not really knowing, because I'm not really knowing which one's gonna be perfect for me, is gonna end up detracting from the thought of what do I have to do right now to park this hole. And so since I only have a zone in the bag, I just say, okay, I'm throwing a zone here. How do I park it? And that's the thought that I'm having. I'm not thinking about what particular disc do I have to throw. And that just, again, not only does it simplify your bag, it simplifies how you're thinking about the shot when you have to throw it. I don't have to think about what disc. I know exactly what disc as soon as I step up to it, because I don't have any other disc that I could throw on this hole in my bag that would make sense. And so I just throw the zone. I'm just gonna throw a standstill zone. It's 242 downhill. I know exactly what I have to do. Oh, it leaked a little bit right, but pretty good, right? Hit the gap, got down there, and that's kind of all you want to do. And because I've been throwing the zone so much lately, because it's the only overstable approach disc, I guess except for like the pyro and the deflector, but like at a 4-speed, like a putter speed, that's all I really got in that overstable slot. And so that's what I'm throwing on pretty much everything. And I know how to manipulate my zone in a ton of different ways now, as opposed to before having a zone and 2 different Toros in the bag. I didn't really know how to manipulate all 3 of those in a ton of different ways. Now I just have one that fills the slot of all 3 of those, and I just know how to throw it a lot of different ways. Now, that's not to say I didn't have the ability to do that before. I certainly could throw pretty much all of my discs on a ton of different shots. The thing was, though, is I wasn't practicing that. I practiced what's the disc to throw here. I didn't really practice how do I throw my zone on 100 different angles. I would say, how do I throw this Toro on 30 different angles, this Toro on another 30 different angles, and then my zone on the other 40. That was kind of how I thought of it. And so it, I guess I leaked way more right than I thought. I'm under this tree. But I now am practicing that way, and so I'm way more comfortable throwing that zone on every single shot that I have to throw it on. And so normally in the past, I would look at this result and I would say, man, I should have thrown the Toro. I had a straighter Toro, it would have been perfect. No, I just had to push it a little bit further left with my zone. That's all I had to do. Because I knew that's what the disc I had to throw. I wasn't thinking about throwing a different disc. I knew this is exactly what I wanted to throw. I just threw it wrong. And so now when I come back to this hole again, I don't have to think about fixing the disc. I just fix the shot a little bit. Oh, how cool would that have been? Oh. So to bring everything back to one point, what I think lowering the number of discs in your bag does is, yes, it makes those gaps seem larger, but you get better at throwing them, and therefore you know a lot about your disc. But what I think it really, really helps with, that kind of goes unnoticed a little bit, is it removes the need to think about what to throw on a hole most of the time. There's going to be some cases where maybe you have a little bit of decision things you have to do, but like I find myself not having to think about what discs I have to throw because I know them so well, and the decision of what disc to throw starts to become automatic. I know exactly what I want to throw on a hole because I know that disc so well, and I'm confident that I can throw it well. And so there's no second thought about what to throw. As soon as I step up to a hole and I look at it and I know I've practiced it, there's no second thought. I know exactly what I have to throw. Or if I did know and there's more of a headwind, okay, I'll just step it up in the stability. If I was throwing my Luster Emperor, I'll step it up to my Halo Emperor, no problem there. And so when that decision starts to become automatic, it frees up all this mental space to worry about what actually matters, which is scoring, which is figuring out how to play the round, how to deal with adversity. If you're always thinking about disc selection, you're kind of muddying the water in your mind of what am I actually thinking about during the round. Freeing up that space to do the hard part, which is actually doing well during the round, is pretty nice. And it just gives you a little bit of trust in your game, right? Like the more trust you have in yourself, the more confidence you have, the better you're gonna play. And so knowing that you're throwing the right disc in every hole, it lets you have a little bit extra confidence. Oh, come back, please. Come on. Oh, it hyzered back, but I think it went very long. I don't know why I was thinking that tree was back there by the basket. I kind of went around it, but I'm actually parked. So it was like 370. I don't know, I just had a very bad depth perception moment there. Maybe because it's not that bright out. I like to use an analogy to kind of help illustrate my point a little bit further. If you aren't already convinced, if you've played any video games, if you played Smash, if you played League of Legends, anything that has to do with learning characters, Overwatch, people will often say, learn 2 to 3 characters per role, right? So for Smash, maybe you just learn 1, 2, or 3 characters. For League, maybe you learn a different character for each lane. For Overwatch, you learn a tank, a support, and a damage character, maybe 2 or 3 in each role. That way, you know them really well, and you could take them out when you need them and use them, but you don't overwhelm yourself with all these different characters because you're not gonna be able to master every single one. If you're really good, maybe you're gonna have a wider pool, but it's gonna be a lot easier to be successful if you limit your pool and get really good with a smaller set of characters. And I think disc golf kind of goes the same way. If you take someone who has a larger bag than mine and you think about each disc as they kind of have to level it up, the more they use it, the better they get with it. They're gonna have all their discs at a lower level because they're gonna have to go through all of them. Where me, I'm gonna level up all my discs faster because I'm throwing each individual disc more than someone who has 10 or 15 more discs in their bag than me. Or if they do wanna level them up at the same rate I do, they have to play a heck of a lot more, and it's gonna be a lot more strenuous, a lot more physically and mentally demanding. And so limiting yourself in a way that you cover all your bases but don't overload yourself, you're gonna feel really, really comfortable with everything in your bag as opposed to kind of feeling sort of comfortable with most of them. Like I've got one throwing putter that I throw on almost every single backhand hole that I'm throwing a throwing putter on. My Lux Vapor Logic, my Cosmic Fury 1. I know what it does. I throw it on so many holes. I'm pretty sure every single time I threw it off the tee, well, we'll say for a par 3, because there was a par 4 that I threw a bad second shot. But anytime I threw a par 3 with this disc at my last tournament, I got a birdie, because I'm that good with this disc. Yeah, that looked pretty good. It's honestly a little bit funny. As I'm making this video and talking about this, I'm coming to some realizations. I'm so good with this Logic because I've been throwing it since I put it in my bag and I haven't changed it. And I have no intention to. However, last year, I had the video where I was looking for throwing putters. I picked one, then picked the other, and I kind of flip-flopped around a bunch of times. I switched my go-to throwing putter for backhands multiple times throughout the year. And so I never felt super comfortable. I remember those straight tunnel shots, like the one I just threw, I was so bad at them. I would pull them left, I would pull them right, I would throw it too high, nose up, into the ground, whatever. I just never felt 100% confident in those shots. And in retrospect, the reason was I was switching the disc all the time. I had like maybe 2 different discs that kind of fit that slot, maybe 2 different stabilities of Envy. Now I just have that Logic that I throw on pretty much every single straight shot within 300 feet, and I feel insanely comfortable with it. I know exactly what angle to put it on, the power, all that stuff, pretty much every single time. And so this is like one of the longer putts I would have with this disc on a hole like this because I've become so consistent with it, because I've stuck with it, I haven't swapped it out, and I've just gotten tons of reps with it. Dude, I like the tacky putters for the cold, but you know, you kind of have that little feeling of like, this might just stick to my hands a little bit, especially when it starts to get warm and your hands get sweaty. Even though it's cold, I kind of forgot how nice it is. These just pop off your fingers as soon as you let go of them. They never stick to anything. I really like the stiffer putters for sure. And so to piggyback off that point, that's why you should not take lightly making changes to your bags, especially for a disc that you have a lot of practice on. If I were to ever change that Logic, let's say if I got a disc manufacturer sponsor, I'm gonna have to make sure that I'm comfortable with whatever I end up replacing it with, because it took me a long time to get to where I'm at with that disc, and I'm not gonna be at that same spot with a new disc right away. Like, I don't think another company quite makes a disc like the Logic. It's a straight flying, slightly overstable, but beats into dead straight, kind of shallow backhand approach putter. If I were to throw a different disc, I would have to learn how to throw it. I would have to learn how it feels. Maybe I have to throw something beaded or deeper or with a different profile or maybe with a different flight numbers entirely. It's basically like taking that like level 100 disc that you put so many hours into and replacing it with a level 1. It's not going to be able to go out there and do the same things that the level 100 did. You have to start boosting it back up again. Think of it as like a WoW character, right? You can't go from your high level character that you leveled up for all those months or whatever and then go into a level 1 and just jump into the same shit that you were doing before. You're not gonna be able to do any of it. You have to go out there and put in the work, put in the reps to level it up, get it back to that point so you can do the same stuff you were before. Same thing goes with a disc. You put a new disc in the bag, you gotta level it up. You gotta put the work in. You can't just say, oh, I'll just switch this out for this and it'll be pretty much the same. Maybe a little bit, but you gotta put the reps in, you gotta feel comfortable with it. That might be a little too far. Oh no, it's parked. Nice. I've been putting surprisingly well. I haven't had a lot of long putts really, like long circle 1 putts. With my cold hands and stiffer putters, and it's like 40 and kind of windy, I would expect to be missing some more of these, but it's been pretty good. Oh, I love those things. The last thing I'll mention with this is also if you have a very specific run of a disc that you throw, or maybe a disc with a very specific wear on it that you throw, you have to make sure you have backups of that, because if you lose that disc, you're essentially, even though you can put the same mold back in the bag, you could go from a level 100 disc down to like a level 10 or something, right? Maybe it's close enough, but it's not gonna be that disc that you've grown accustomed to, and you're gonna have to either wear it back in, find that specific run, or get used to the differences, even if in the same mold, of the 2 runs. And so that's why I've kind of started to move away from looking for very specific runs of discs. It's why I've stopped throwing destroyers, because I had to find specific runs, and after a while they got harder and harder to get my hands on, and if I lose one, or if I get one that's too beat in and gets too flippy on me, I can't go and just buy a new stock destroyer. I have to go and find the specific run that I want to be throwing. And so that Z zone that I've been throwing, I know I can just grab a stock Z zone and it's gonna fly pretty much exactly how I want it to as soon as I get it. And pretty much every other disc in my bag, I've tried to do that exact same thing. I want to be able to find that disc easily and replace it as quickly as I have to. That's why I moved away from the Skywalkers and started throwing just an S-Line FD1, because eventually the Skywalker 1, as great of a disc as it is, might be harder to find. And there's gonna be maybe a little bit of differences in the grip, in the flight. Although small, they're there, and I wanna know that I can just throw exactly the disc I want if I lose this. And so I can just get another S-Line FD1. It's gonna be exactly the same. I know exactly how it flies, no problems at all. I don't think I've parked this hole on video before on the channel, and this course should be going back to normal, so I won't really be able to play it anymore for a while. So let's try and put a little park job on it, eh? That might be it. Don't fade too much. Oh, it's fading left. That is not parked. I thought it was gonna just hold straight. A little bit of a right to left tailwind. Oh, this is so gettable. This is very much in range. Oh, oh. So yeah, that's my sort of new philosophy for my bag. I know it's a lot of talking for basically the entire idea being, I took like 8 discs out of my bag, but even though it's a very simple idea, I think it has a lot of implications that I think should be talked about. And I think a lot of people want to put a lot of discs in their bag. They find a new disc that's maybe a little bit different than everything else. You know, maybe you have 7 speeds and 9 speeds, but then you find a Passion, and the Passion just flies a little bit different, and maybe like 10 feet further than your 7 speeds, but like not quite as overstable as your 9 speed, and so you throw it in the bag. And like, while that can be attractive and fun, if you're trying to play well, if you're trying to score, if you want to be competitive, I think that's going to take away from your overall goal of playing well, and possibly introduce extra variability into your game that you don't need. And beyond that, all the other things I talked about, I think all play into it. And I think that's why this is a good philosophy, a good way to think about building your bag. Aside from just like the actual discs you're putting in them, just like how many and like how much decisions you're giving yourself round to round. Anyway, yeah, first tournament went pretty well. Feeling pretty good about my bag, getting it dialed in. Got the more stiff putters, which are feeling a lot better, even in the cold. So sorry, Flex 2s, just not my favorite. I got another tournament this weekend, keeping it simple, gonna keep grinding. Good luck out there, everyone. I'll see you next time. Peace.